Link to original text and author's account is in the description. Hyland took a moment to compose herself before she entered the medical wing. Her fronds faded from agitated pink to calm blue, her gills stilled their frantic flutter. She took a breath. This was always the hardest part of her work. They took the news in different ways. Shouting and screaming were bad. Crying was harder. It was difficult to be professional with battle-hardened warriors breaking down in tears in front of her. The worst ones tried to tear off their offending limbs or kill themselves rather than face the abomination that they'd become. Abomination though it may be, it was necessary. Civilians who lost a limb could go without learning to live handicapped. But this was war. Soldiers had to work at peak efficiency, and that meant the twisted marriage of flesh and metal that Hyland had to work with so often. She calmed and comforted them, but they were always changed afterwards. Their former comrades never treated them the same, and how could they? The patients themselves seemed diminished, shell-shocked, like their arms or legs had stolen their vitality when they parted. Still, the recent progress in the field was definitely helping. The prosthetics were becoming more and more realistic, more indistinguishable from a natural limb. The soldiers could pretend, almost believe, that they had not become a monster. She stroked the datasheet with a long webbed finger. Oh, this particular patient was one of the mercenaries picked up from the various neutral systems, from a fledgling race known as the humans. They were rarely seen beyond the fringes of civilized space. The engineers had never needed to make a prosthetic for their species before, but they had done their best and assured her that it was up to par. She'd have to see that for herself. She opened the door. The human was conscious, sitting up on a bed never designed for his race, secured for his own safety. His prosthetic arm was well done, so well done that Hyland had to check the chart to know which was which, but it was his face she was more concerned with. His eyes, startlingly high on his head, were wide and an alien blue. His teeth were bared in a snarl, but data stated that on a human, such a threat display was actually a social gesture of greeting and familiarity. "Hey," he said. Hyland tried to return the expression, but drawing the teeth back felt bizarre.
Lance Corporal Simon Grant. I am Pespecadal Hyland, your caretaker. Are you aware of what has happened?
Yup, pretty much. I get the picture, he said cheerfully. Basically, I got my arm blown off down in Mixer 8, so you guys fixed me up with a new one.
What? Who told you?
This was bad. Patients had to be told of such a traumatic event by a trained professional. The very idea that someone had callously told him, then left him alone, was wrong in so many ways. Luckily, he seemed to be a hysterical type. They tended not to harm themselves until after the shock wore off. "Oh, no one told me," he said, mouth still bared in that smile thing. "I figured it out myself. If you really didn't want me to know, then maybe you should have kept my tattoo." Hyland looked up from her notes.
You're what? I don't understand that word.
He pulled his collar down, revealing a discoloration on his pectoral. Hyland leaned in closer. It appeared to be a pattern, forming symbols she could only assume were from an ugly human language. "You guys don't have tattoos?" he asked. "It's where you stab ink into your skin to make a picture. Stays there for rest of the life, unless removed by laser, of course." Hyland pulled her head back so fast it hit the wall. Her fronds flushed a full crimson. The very idea that someone would bring a dye, an actual potentially toxic dye, into their body just to make a picture. She found her voice, but not as well as she wanted.
Your arm.
Yeah. You see. I mean like, I was thinking about that, he said. Like what's the point of getting a robo-arm if nobody figure it? You know what I mean. Like this one looks too much like the one I had before. So like, could you guys just give me the bare bones version maybe? Like just a metal. You know what I mean.
Bare bones. Are you?
Her head was feeling heavy. And I was thinking, could you like, get the techies to fit a weapon or something onto it? I mean a gun would be badass, but even a switchblade would do. You get what I mean?
If you could just, excuse me for a moment.
Sure, take your time. But think about it, will you? He waved her off with his prosthetic, so smoothly, so easily, as if it were just his regular arm and not a metal thing. I mean it's not much to ask, is it? He said behind her. She made it out the door. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall for support and tried to make her gills settle down.
Breathe deeply,
she told herself. Eventually, calm returned. She looked at the human's door.
Must have lost his sanity due to trauma,
she concluded and reluctantly walked back to her office.